Hi, my name is Sherry Sanders, and I'm a county extension agent working in the field of agriculture for the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture, and this is Agriculture. Agriculture is a program where we celebrate women working in the field of agriculture in the state of Arkansas. This month's guest is Taylor Wiseman. Taylor is the Executive Director of the Arkansas FFA Foundation, and this is Taylor's story.
So as I was going through college, I always had this desire to go work in D.C. on agriculture policy. And that really came about from my time in high school doing public speaking. So I tried to choose topics that were relevant and kind of those hot topics of the day. And one of the topics was a rule from the Department of Labor that would limit youth working on farms. They came and said it was dangerous, it was way too hot, there was, really high surfaces they'd have to climb, animals are dangerous. My parents would just say that's how they built character in us, but there is some danger to working on a farm, and so folks kind of wanted to limit youth's involvement, which would really hurt 4-H and FFA members. And so from that, I had a speech, and my ag teacher was like, "You're the first follower of your mission, so if you're going to do a speech, you've got to have a call to action, and you need to act as well." So in 11th grade, I wrote a letter to our elected officials in D.C., and I got a letter back from Senator Boozman that said, "Yes, I agree with you. I'm fighting this rule. I will continue to advocate for agriculture in Arkansas." And I just thought that was so cool that I sent this letter and then got a response from one of our senators and was really excited. And, full circle, later he became my boss. But I think that letter really kind of started those thoughts of, okay, who wrote this letter? Who is in D.C. working on ag policy, and could I do that? And thankfully got to visit D.C. with different organizations throughout the year. So when I was finishing up at the University of Arkansas with my master's in agriculture economics, I'd interned in D.C., so I started reaching back out and was fortunate to land a job with the Senate Agriculture Committee. The first year I was there was with Chairman Pat Roberts of Kansas. He had been on an ag committee in the Senate or the House for 46 years, and so he had such an established team that really took me under their wing and just helped me learn D.C., learn ag policy, what does it mean to advocate for agriculture. And then once he retired, Senator Boozman became the leader of the Senate Ag Committee for the Republicans, and got to stay on his staff for a few years, and then got to advocate for agriculture, but specific to Arkansas, which was absolutely incredible experience. So in the role on the Senate Ag Committee, I got to use my master's of Ag Econ, so I was able to pull a lot of data and work with our chief economist there and figure out, what's kind of the picture of farm country. I was there kind of in the last 5 years, and so we went through COVID, went through ups and downs in different markets from cattle to row crops, and so learning just the nuances of all of those markets and how to be able to take all of this data and stories and then give it to my boss at the time, and also with that action of how do we support this industry, or how do we support this policy, and why does this matter to Arkansas? And so that was really cool. Of everything we did, we always thought, how does this impact Arkansas producers? And so it was fun for me because I could envision Arkansas producers. I know people that grow rice and that grow catfish and that have cattle and have poultry houses and have timber. And so that was probably the coolest part, was working for a member from Arkansas and just having a direct connection back to our state. And so a few things we worked on throughout those years of, looking at the cattle markets and how do we make sure that cattle producers understand the markets and they have transparency there, and making sure that at the end of the day, consumers are getting that healthy product. We did a lot with animal disease. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of outbreaks over the past few years just with some of our different species from poultry, and even now threats for cattle. And so we were constantly on the phone with, the folks at USDA, the folks here in Arkansas, just making sure we were protecting Arkansas producers. And it was cool to be able to play that part of bringing all those people together to have those conversations, so that, when we were visiting a poultry farmer or talking to them, we could tell them, Senator Boozman and our staff is doing everything that we can to protect you and your operation, because we know your family really depends on this and the community depends on it. I think one of the cool stories that we told a lot of was just when you look at the state of Arkansas, and we have 75 counties, and in the last census, just over 50 of those lost population. And so that was a staggering statistic to think through, that most of the counties in Arkansas have lost population, particularly the rural parts of our state, and really the urban or the more populous counties are the ones gaining population. And so that started us asking of like, why are people leaving, and how in agriculture policy can we make it easier for people to acquire land or to farm that land or to have support or to have markets abroad so they can export those products as well. So that was something, you know, even I was in D.C. for a short time, but even now in my role with the foundation, I'm always thinking like, how do we support those rural communities? That's primarily where our FFA members are, and how do we encourage them if they want to stay there, if they want a job. Like, there are jobs in agriculture that can support their lifestyle. So I think really from that I thought, okay, how do I become an advocate for rural Arkansas and rural America, kind of regardless of the title or position that I have. And so it was really fun to be on that staff to do some great work for Arkansas, and then I got to continue that because as Congressman Westerman was coming into chairman of his committee in the House on Natural Resources, had an opportunity to go work for him. So spent 2 years there with another member from Arkansas, just wondering how do we, again, advocate for rural Arkansas, specifically in his district, the forestry industry and timber as it kind of relates to his work there on the committee, and got to work really across the country, focused on so many rural communities that, you know, in some ways live and die by what the federal government does or fails to do. And so again, I found that's my passion. If I could do something where folks in rural America, rural Arkansas are able to thrive, then I know that I've kind of found my calling, and that's really why it made a lot of sense to step into a role to now, you know, instead of do policy for rural Arkansas, let's do fundraising for rural Arkansas and really help the state in a different way.